Good morning, everybody. Matt Murphy with C Incorporated. A lot of you are in the last session, so I'm not going to go into that again. But if you need a safety consultant or have questions about safety, I'm here for you. If you have questions, I'll ask a few times if there's any questions. You're more than welcome to key your mic up then. For now, let's go ahead and turn those mics off, but screens on if you would. I like seeing your faces while I'm teaching, so that's a good thing. It gives me some energy and allows me to help through this. Um, but also you can use the chat box. If you find your tools there and open up the chat box, you're more than welcome to ask questions in there. If I don't catch them, Chastity will definitely key me up and let me know what the question is so we can try to get everybody's questions answered. Again, we're talking about OSHA record keeping here, so we're going to start off with the 300. We'll also talk about where to find on the OSHA website so you can post your OSHA record keeping stuff. That's been a requirement here for a few years, and people still say, "Well, that doesn't apply to me." So we'll talk to you and see if that really does apply to you or not. All right, let me get in here. If I get this to go. There we go. Again, we want you to know what's recordable and what's not recordable. A lot of people trip up the difference between recordability and compensability. That's not really the case. All right, so we can talk about that. If you have questions, I'm going to try to answer them. This one, I have a little bit more time at the end, so any questions that you have from both sessions, I'll be happy to answer at the end as well. Review the difference. We already know that. Understand how to fill out the 300 form and the 300A form. Also know what the 301 is in case you don't have that information, which everybody should, because you should have a first report of accident that we'll talk about. Understand when to post the forms. All right. February 1st, the end of April, we have to have these posted. Is that the time that OSHA's coming in to take a look at them? No, that's the period that your employees get to look at them. If I'm a new employee and I walk up and I see that there's a fatality, well, is that my job position? How did that happen? Right? So that's the information that they're looking at there. OSHA will ask for your 300 forms, usually your last 3 to 5 years of your OSHA 300 forms, almost every time they come out and do an inspection. We'll also talk about when COVID cases are recordable. That's a little less, most people know by now, but we'll talk about it and we'll try to, again, answer your questions. So we need to know what had a lost work day, recordable injuries, fatality, medical treatment beyond first aid, job transfer or termination. Those are all parts and pieces that we're going to track. Any employers with 10 or more employees at any time during a calendar year has to fill out an OSHA 300 form. Well, we only had 8 employees, but we hired 3 rental employees, some rental labor. Then if you didn't hire supervision with them, they became your employees for those few days. You're over 10, fill it out. Hopefully it zeros across the board. Sign your name, understand what your NAICS code is, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and you're golden. Just make sure you keep that record available. That's what it looks like. Case number. Big question I always get about case number. That's up to you. If you want to do 101, 001, whatever you want to do, that's your case number. I have people going, "Well, I called OSHA and they couldn't tell me how to fill out the case number." Don't call OSHA about that. Right? This is your record keeping. Employee's name. You always put the employee's name here unless it's a privacy case. So, it was a sexual assault, it was HIV exposure, there's certain lists of things, or the employee just said, "I don't want my name on there." Then you would have to put privacy case number, whatever, and keep that in a separate file. All right. Job title. If you only have one welder there and it's a privacy case, don't put welder because we'll know who it is, right? So again, that just says, what's that? I guess somebody just keyed up their mic accidentally. Mute your mic if you don't mind. What's the date of the injury? Where did it occur? What was the injury or illness and the body part? All right. Was it an injury to the left index finger? Where did it occur? Was it on the loading dock? Right. That's what we need to know. And then we have these first sets of shaded areas, G, H, I, and J. Was it death? No. Was it days away from work? If so, put a check mark here. If it wasn't days away, but it was restricted, did it include job transfer or restrictions? If so, then you put your check mark there. If not, it goes in that final check mark. There must be one of these 4 checked, one of the 4. Well, it was days away and then it became job transfer. Well, it started with days away. That's where we're going to go. All right. And then the next one, you have two white boxes again. That's K and L. How many days were involved with job transfer or job restrictions? Put that number of days there. How many days were away? Put that number of days there. We're going to track those separately. And then we have to classify this scenario. So go to box M, and that's where we see what was it, right? Was it skin irritation, respiratory, poisoning? All of this stuff goes across there. You're going to check one of those boxes. We're going to keep these across the board, and we're going to keep totals down at the bottom. So when we get ready to go do our 300A that we post, we're just going to take those totals and they're going to ask for those specific boxes. All right. So here's what the 300A looks like. See under number of
Hello.
cases,
Hello.
G, H, I, and J. If we scroll back here, we can find all those right here, G, H, I, and J. So we're going to take all those numbers and we're going to transfer them right over to here. If you go to OSHA.gov and you go to their search and you do fillable OSHA 300 form, this is all going to be kept for you. The information that you do the other one with, this is going to populate over here. You just double check the numbers and then you fill in your establishment information. Take a look under that box all the way to the right. Establishment information, your establishment name. What are you legally known as? What's the address? This is an older one. Now it's all NAICS code. So it's not a SIC code anymore. It's NAICS code. If you don't know, look at your insurance policy or Google NAICS code and what you do. If you're a mason and you say NAICS code, masonry, commercial, then it's going to come up with a little listing. Make sure that fits you, okay? And put that number in right there. What is that code tracking? It's tracking your industry, all right? So when we say, you know, we look at your EMR, everybody has an EMR, right? You know what that is, hopefully. That number comes from where do you line up in your industry, all right? If you're having an average number of accidents and recordables and days away, that's going to put you at a 1 EMR. If you're more frequent, it's going to put you above a 1. If you're less frequent because you're safer, it's going to put you below a 1, okay, over a standard period of time. But that's the kind of information that they're going to use there. That all by your classification.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Hey, this is Ronnie. Hey, thanks. Quick question. I'm sorry. Since you're talking about the EMR, what's the good numbers for the companies in order to beat the projects to have a good EMR?
Sub 1. You want to be less than a 1. That's the
Okay.
rule of thumb.
Thank
Some
you.
companies drill down below that and they say it's below a 0.96 for some of the big GCs that I've talked to, but below a 1 is what you want. If you're above a 1, we'll talk about that. You need
Thank
to
you.
get that number down. I'm just going to put EMR here so I can go over it here in a little bit. You go write down the number and it asks you how many employees do you have on average? You put that number in. Total hours by all employees this last year. So put in the number. Sign here. This is where we mess up a lot of times. That is the highest ranking company executive. That is not, you know, whoever we put in to pull these numbers together, whether it's, an intern or whatever. The executive needs to sign off on this because OSHA wants the executive to take a look at these numbers and see that they have 26 days away from work. That's a problem. They need to pay some more attention to that. So that's why they asked for that. So highest company official at that company. We're going to talk about satellite locations here in a second too. Up at the top right-hand corner, what is the year? Fill that out. Believe it or not, that can be up to a $16,000 fine for just not putting that, we're doing it for last year. So it's 24. What we're working on right now is 24. All right. Questions so far about the forms themselves? This form right here, the 300A that you're looking at, that's February 1st to the end of April. That's what gets posted. Well, it's
Hey,
okay
Matt.
to just leave them up. No, you don't want to leave anything up that you don't have to. Somebody else have a question?
Yeah, quick question on the hours. We've got a field and a small office. It's everybody's hours, correct?
Correct.
Mine.
Unless you have to deal with a satellite location. Okay. So if you have a big project that comes up that's going to take 2 years and you have certain people who are assigned to that location, that's going to be a separate 300 form. That does not
Okay.
get added back into your main company's 300 form. Those hours don't either. So I
Right.
always say, think about Home Depot and Walmart and Lowe's. When you go back toward the bathrooms and see the OSHA 300 form up, that's for that location. That's not for worldwide Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. Okay. Satellite location again is more than 1 year that requires that. And it's only the employees that are there. Let's say that I'm working from the home office, but I'm out doing a walk on a job in Milwaukee and I get injured. Do I go on Milwaukee's? No, because I'm not assigned there. I still go in the home office because that's where I'm
Oh,
actually assigned. So just a few questions from there. So we have a little flow chart here. Makes it pretty easy. Oh, we got Ronald in the waiting room here. Um, ask the employee, did the employee experience an injury or illness? You got to think of it in multiple steps. Well, yes, but no, it's yes or no. So somebody comes to you, they're complaining that their shoulder hurts. Did they experience an injury or illness? Yes or no? Well, they hurt, so they have an injury. So yes. Is it work related? Now we got to figure that out. So when did you first experience this? Well, I was moving my brother this weekend and kind of tweaked something in my shoulder. Oh, okay. Is this a new case? Yes or no? Well, yes, this is new, but they did it at home. Well, does it meet the injury illness general recording criteria, which states if they significantly aggravated it while at work, now it's recordable. Okay. So you hire somebody and they have a bad back. They tell you they have a bad back. I'll get you a letter from a doctor that says I have a bad back. It doesn't matter. You still buy that back if it gets twisted or it gets hurt worse at work. All right. It's going to end up on the 300 form. So if it meets the criteria, you're going to record the injury or illness. If it's not a new case, I tweaked this shoulder at work and I was back, but I was still taking meds and maybe going to PT. 3 weeks later, I did something else to tweak it and it hurts again. Well, I'm going to update those dates on that original case. This is a great time of year because maybe our case was last year and we have 20 days restricted before the new year, but I'm still restricted. I still end up on last year's OSHA 300 form. Does that make sense?
hey, Matt,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Quick question.
Yep.
In the past, I did have employee who came to work with back injuries from the weekend. Okay. And what I did is go back to doctor and I need to see the uh, doctor recommendation, how good you are or you still able to do the job or not. So at this point, in order to back it up my company, what I did, I have him sign a document where it says the injury was not at work. If this is good, is legal, what do you think?
Now, if somebody gets hurt at home, they need to go get better before they come back to work. You don't need them at 50%. You don't need them at 70%. They're going to retweak that injury and you're going to end up buying it. That's how that works. So,
Okay, good. Thank you.
yeah, and that's why some people prefer to have a pre-employment health screening
Right.
so that they can put them through before they're even hired. They put them through some simulations and make sure that they're fit for duty. That's what they call it, fit for duty. You don't get to find out what they failed. They just say yes or no. Should you hire them?
Okay.
All right. So back to recordability. Worker at a nurse's station with a complaint of painful wrists. The employee was given 2 Advil and returned to the job. Do we proceed to step 2? Did they have an injury or illness? How many people say we keep going?
No.
No, why not? Did they? They're painful wrists, so we need to figure out the next step. So we do proceed to step 2. There's a chlorine gas leak at XYZ establishment. 2 employees in the area are rushed to the hospital. They're told to stay home the next day as a precautionary measure. Do we stop here or do we go on? Well, we need more information there, don't we? All right.
Yeah.
We need to find out. It may have just been the employer's uh, deal that you always get checked out if there's a leak in your area, right? So there was a chlorine gas leak. You work the area, you go get checked out. You're being given a day off as precautionary. That may not be a recordable because you may not experience any symptoms of chlorine gas exposure. The establishment and other locations, one or more employees are working or present, includes physical location and equipment or materials used by employees during the work of their workday. Are you there as a present as a member of the general public? Let's say it's, George's retirement party. So everybody's coming in to say goodbye to George. So you're there basically as a visitor that day. It's your day off. Well, shoot, you slipped and you fell and you hurt yourself. Is that going to get recorded? No, you're there
No,
part of general public. Symptoms arising in the work environment that are solely due to non-work related event or exposure. So maybe you took medications at your lunch break that you're prescribed for something at home. Well, you had a reaction to that. Is that going to be recordable? No, because you were self-medicating and that was not part of the work-related experience, right? Voluntary participation in a wellness program, medical, fitness, or recreational activity. I don't know if a lot of you were around in the 90s and went to offices, but everybody had a little workout room, right? Everybody had a treadmill. Everybody was going to get fit. Everybody was going to, have that personal trainer on staff. Well, all of a sudden, those people started getting hurt. That's a problem, right? So being there, getting hurt, they went right on to uh, your 300 form.
hey Matt, I'm sorry, another question I think is important for me. And in the winter time, what do? We do the warm up first thing in the morning, like 6 a.m., right? Little bit push up, stretch, make sure before the guys go up there to work, they are properly warm up. And in the process to warm it up, someone got hurt. And it was a back injury, by the way. And is this a recordable?
Yep, they are there. From the time they park their vehicle and get out to the time they leave,
Okay,
they're on your property.
okay, thank you.
If it's a requirement to do the stretching and the warm-ups, yep, that's part of their job. All right. Eating, drinking, preparing food for personal consumption, not recordable. All right. Personal tasks outside work hours, not recordable. Personal grooming, self-medication, not recordable. What if you're staying at a conference and you're at a hotel and you slip in the shower and you break your arm? Is that recordable?
Yes, I guess.
No, because we've
No,
established home away from home. So you're at the conference, you're doing your thing for the conference. If you got hurt during that, yes, it's recordable. If you're back at your room doing stuff for personal reasons, living your life, that is not a recordable. All right. Motor vehicle accident in the parking lot or access road, that's not a recordable. All right. That's a different deal. DOT has their own thing. But from the time they get on, I had one where the guy got out of his truck, slipped on ice on his running board, fell in the parking lot. That's recordable. They're already there. All right. So, especially this time of year, how are we going to deal with people on slick situations? Maybe some cleats that you can put on top of your shoes or teaching them how to walk with their weight over their leading foot. Certain things like that might help. But this is a bad time for these to pop up. Common cold or flu are not recordable. COVID, if it's work related, which, hey, I was working with somebody yesterday, they came up positive. Here it's a couple days later, I'm positive. That's going to be work related. All right. That's been a big issue. If you have a company picnic on a Saturday, employees are not paid and it's not mandatory attendance and someone gets injured, is that recordable? No, they're there as part of general public. They are voluntarily there. Okay. Now, if they are your ringer in your softball league, and that's part of the reason they got employed there, and that part of their contract says they have to play, then it's recordable. But no, you're not on company property. They're there as part of general public. So you're good there. Does it change if attendance is mandatory? Yes. Yes, it does. If you say everybody has to show up at the company picnic, then anything that happens at the company picnic can be an issue. It can be recordable. So yes. Um, you're welcome. That's not a problem. Mental illness, unless employee voluntarily provides a medical opinion from a physician, licensed healthcare provider that says it became part of their work-related experience, then it might, but most times it's not. An injury or illness occurs while an employee is on travel status that we've established home away from home. All right. Detour for a personal reason that is not work related. Two different items. We had one, this gentleman was close to a Home Depot, so he ran over there to get some product for his house, save himself a trip for later on his lunch break. Tweaked his knee really bad, sprained it as a matter of fact. And he had the company truck, so everybody's going, "Oh, that's work related. That's work related." Why did you grab that stuff? "Oh, I needed it later for home." That's not work related. You took a detour for personal reason. Okay. Now, I tell you, be there at 5:30 at Home Depot so you can at 6 o'clock go pick up 6 bags of salt for this snow that we're getting ready to have, and you rent your back. Guess what? That's work related. All right, somebody drew on the screen. I don't know who did that, but okay. Injury and illness that occur while an employee is working at home. It can be work related if it occurs while the employee is performing work for pay or compensation in the home and are directly related to the performance of the work. One of these that I actually had to go in and do an investigation for, the young lady tripped, fell, hurt herself. So I showed up the next day. They told her I will be there to do a follow-up investigation because all of them get investigated. What would you do if you knew the safety person was coming? Maybe, I don't know, clean up a little bit or something. This lady had basically what looked like a toy store destroyed with a bunch of kids that were all the same age. I don't believe they were all hers. So one question I had was, okay, where were you? She was in the garage. She walked through this playroom, which had, again, full of kids screaming and running around, and she's sitting there in her sling. So what happened? Well, I tripped coming into the house and, fell, and that's why I got hurt. Okay. But this area, what are you doing here? Looks like you're running maybe a daycare. Yeah, but my boss doesn't need to know that. Well, yes, because did you do it while you were working for your at-home daycare, or did you do it while you were working for the employer? So that gets a little sticky there. Employee gives blood at a voluntary sponsored blood drive and passes out. It's loss of consciousness. Do we record or do we stop here? Well,
We say record.
voluntary. It's not mandatory. So again, we can stop here. It's not work related. Employee sprains ankle in company parking lot on the way to work. Again, do we stop here or do we record? So far, we record, right? We're going to see what happens with that employee. No previous injury or illness of the same type is affected to that body part. This is a new case. Or you had a previous injury but recovered completely. So medical opinion was that you recovered completely. Once you get that and you have another accident or you have another issue with that same body part, it becomes a new exposure. But until you get fully recovered and released from the doctor, you can get released, but with medical guidance or taking medications or going to therapy. Again, that would go back to the original if we have more days or more things to record. New case is also if there's a medical opinion regarding resolution of a case, the employer must follow that opinion. If an exposure triggers the reoccurrence, it is a new case. So if you are working with a certain chemical and you break out into rash and you go to the doctor, you get some cream, it gets cleaned up, maybe you get rid of that chemical. Well, new manager comes in or new purchasing person comes in and buys the old chemical because it was cheap. And now you're exposed to it again and you get that same rash. Now you're another recordable accident. Okay. So you've already came back 100% once. Now you're going to have to do it again. If signs and symptoms reoccur, even in the absence of exposure, it's not a new case. This happens with things like silicosis, tuberculosis, asbestosis, some of those items.
Matt, we have another question in chat. Company picnic is not mandatory. Owner says he really wants everybody to attend because he's passionate about his employees. Does that count? Does that legally count as mandatory to attend? That pressure to attend?
No.
Well, that's a little bit of pressure, but I mean, unless they say everybody must attend, it's really not there. It's going to be sticky because if somebody gets hurt bad enough, and they're going to say, well, why aren't you taking care of my injury? You told me I had to be there. No, we said we'd like you there, but that's up to you. We understand people have other things to do. I get it, but now you're starting to get into a gray area there. Did they perceive it as mandatory or did they perceive it as they could go if they want to? That's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be a lot of interviewing and a lot of questions. All right. Hopefully I got that. If not, keep hitting me over there and we'll check it out. Scenario A, 5 weeks ago, an employee sprained a wrist at work, received support, prescription medication, and light duty. 2 weeks ago, employee was on the job and completely recovered. Today, 5 weeks after the injury, the employee complains about pain in the same wrist. Are we to a new case or not?
No.
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yep. Yes, because they completely recovered. That's exactly.
Even though, I'm sorry, Matt, even though if the employee has the paper from the doctor, is ready to go back to work, and moving batches, they got hurt again, I think is moving forward recoverable, correct?
As long as they're moved forward and it said they were completely recovered.
Okay.
They say they can go back to work with restrictions. It's fine. Any of those restrictions, etc., are going to end up on that old case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not new until they're back to 100%. Same scenario we had 5 weeks ago. An employee sprained a wrist at work, received support and prescription medication and light duty. 2 weeks ago, the employee was back on the normal job but continued to take prescription medication. Today, 5 weeks after the injury, the employee complains of the pain. Again, there was no complete recovery here, so now this is a new case. Okay, so it's going to get probably recorded as a new case. Meet any other criteria? Did they transfer to another job? Was it medical treatment beyond first aid? Did they have loss of consciousness? Was it a significant injury or illness diagnosed by a practicing licensed healthcare provider? PLHCP. All right, those things may be recordable. Days away. 1 or more days away from work, excluding the day of the accident. So I get hurt today. Today doesn't count. They tell me to take the rest of the day off and get back tomorrow. I should be good. Then it doesn't count. All right. There's no day away. If, some people put in there, if I'm here today and they say, check back with your doctor at 10 in the morning, but then we'll release you back to work. Well, if I'm going to a medical appointment, that doesn't count as the day away as long as I can show up to work and then go to the doctor's appointment. Okay. So there's some parts and pieces there. Do not include the day of the injury or illness. Max count is 180 days. Remember, we count every single day besides the date of the accident while they were out. Calendar day. Doesn't matter if you're usually off on the weekends. Doesn't matter that they were supposed to be off on vacation the following week. We have to count every day until they get back. If that day is going beyond 180, we cap it at 180. If the person leaves the company, all right, and this is why we talk about back to work programs are so important. You get with an OCDOC and they say, well, they got to do their work from a seated position. They can't drive. You arrange driving, but they can do it from a seated position. Okay, well, we have them out in the warehouse and they are resorting screws, or they're in the office and they're going to help with phones, or they're going to help with a truck count, whatever that may be. And the employee says, no, I'm not coming in. Well, we have employment available. Now, this is where, your insurance company, et cetera, need to be brought up to date. We made employment available. You're refusing employment. Understand, you want to leave, that's on you. If they leave, that count stops that day. All right. Unrelated. They just decided they didn't want to come back to work. All right. You make work available, that's where you're kind of in the driver's seat a little bit. Injuries and illnesses are a tricky slope to be on. All right. So a lot of times we'll lean back on the insurance company. Hey, is this work related? Well, I can't find out because the employee isn't telling me this, isn't telling me that. turn it over to insurance. Let them do the investigation. They'll tell you whether or not it's work related. All right. A lot of times, people want to take care of accidents up to a certain level in-house so they can help with their EMR. Get that 100%. But the one-offs, the weird ones, the ones where we need support, especially from maybe getting a private eye or something like that involved, let's get that through the insurance agency so we can, we'll let them do that. They're very good at that stuff. If a medical opinion exists, we must follow that medical opinion. I can tell you good back to work programs. There may be stuff where they go, man, I just can't take another day of being on an OSHA 30-hour online. I want to go back to work so bad. Well, you need to let the doctor tell us we're going to let you back to work. All right. We can't do it any other way. Record the case if it involves one or more days of restricted or job transfer. All right. Check the box for restricted or transfer if you do that, and then count the number of days. Do not, again, include the date of the injury or illness. What is restricted? Unable to work a full workday that you would have otherwise. Unable to perform one or more functions that you would during your normal job routine. Excuse me. I had a superintendent. It was very good at just pointing out things, never put their hands on and did anything physical. Broke their finger. And they wanted to be on light work. Great. Because you already just point that finger and tell people what to do anyways. What is it restricting you from? Come to find out, nothing. They could do everything they wanted to do, just like they normally would do it. Well, that's not restricted. That just means you can't use that finger and do anything. But now it's taped up. You don't even have to flex those muscles. You can just point now, right? So that wasn't one that we had to record. It was a sprain. It wasn't a break. So the employee experiences minor musculoskeletal discomfort. Okay. Is it recordable or not? Well, did they get an x-ray? Is there anything broken? Can they still do their job? This may not be recordable. They may get told by the doc to take a couple Advil. As long as it's non-prescription medication in non-prescription strength, still not recordable. It's when we get a prescription or we use non-prescription medication at a prescription strength that it becomes recordable. All right. The employer assigns a work restriction to the employee for the purpose of preventing a more serious condition from developing. You can do what you normally do, but I don't want you to be in that situation for a week or two. Okay. I'm, as the employer, putting you, basically restricting you from that. That's not really recordable as a restricted work case. I'm doing it as a preventative measure. Let's go back to that chlorine gas leak. We don't know if you were exposed. We want to make sure that you don't show any signs of exposure before we say yes or no on whether or not that's recordable. Job transfer: an injured or ill person is assigned to a job other than his or her regular job. Light duty, that's job transfer, right? A lot of times light duty is going to be that job transfer. Well, why should we do it? Well, A, you're going to be paying them anyways. Number two, you keep them in the same rhythm that they would normally be and around those same people they normally work with. All right. You kind of keep them in that whole thing and you keep them away from home, right? Because at home, at let's say 8 a.m. to about 4 p.m., what's every other commercial? Have you been hurt on the job? Right? We want to make sure we sue them because they did not do what they were supposed to do. We see those commercials constantly. Get them out of that mentality. Get them back into work mentality. They come back much faster. And they're usually happier because they can still be productive part of what's going on. All right, medical treatment is management or care to combat a disease or disorder. It does not include visits to the doctor, just for observation and counseling, diagnostic procedures, first aid procedures, non-prescription medication, tetanus shots. Okay, that's the only shot we can give them that that is not recordable. Cleaning, flushing, soaking surface wounds, wound coverings with butterfly bandages and Steri-strips. They have those new ones that are like the 2 strips, and you just pull the little tabs, and that pulls your wound back together. That's all considered the same thing as a butterfly bandage. Notice that does not say glue. So if you use wound glue, that's beyond first aid. All right. Butterfly bandages, Steri-strips are okay. Hot cold therapy, non-rigid means of support, temporary immobilization, the drilling of fingernails or toenails to drain fluid from a blister, eye patches, removing foreign bodies from an eye using irrigation or cotton swab, removing splinters or foreign material from other areas than the eye by irrigation, tweezers, and cotton swabs. That's what it's supposed to be. Finger guards, massages, drinking fluids to relieve heat stress. So all that stuff, first aid only. All cases involving loss of consciousness must be recorded unless it follows one of the other issues. Work-related conditions must always be recorded at time of diagnosis. Cancer, chronic irreversible diseases, punctured eardrums, fractured, cracked bone or tooth. Had somebody drop a testing implement, cracked his tooth. That was a few months ago. Record all needle sticks, sharp objects that are contaminated from another person's blood, blood splashes, etc. So if you're the first aid provider and you get blood on you, that needs to be recorded. Medically removed under medical surveillance. So your lead levels get too high in your blood and you're doing lead abatement, time to get you out of there. And that's going to be a recordable. Record cases 1 or more days away from restricted work. And again, do not record voluntary removal. Again, if you use those lead values, most employers that deal with lead have a lower percentage than OSHA, about 10% of what OSHA allows. Once you hit that trigger, you're taken out of the hot area. Let your blood values go down before you're allowed to do that work again. Hearing loss, 25 decimal shift at 2, 3, or 4,000 hertz in the same ear, standard threshold shift. That must be recorded. If you don't do hearing evaluations pre-hire, it's very hard to say that doing the work that you do, especially in construction, didn't contribute to their hearing loss. So there are a lot of different things that employees, IV for heat stress, this is recordable, correct? Yes, that is beyond first aid. You didn't just give them a bottle of water. So there are pre-employment screenings and equipment that you can rent or own that are on iPads, and you can do hearing screenings pre-employment if you want to. If you do fitness for duty, make sure you get the audiogram at the same time. Because if they're around big pieces of equipment, we get to the toolbox talk on hearing loss, and they go shopping for a hearing aid that's 10 grand plus, guess what? They're probably going to say that that happened during work. TB. Again, if a worker is diagnosed with TB after being around another person at work with TB, that may be recordable. But if they're living with somebody who's diagnosed with TB, tuberculosis, then that is probably not recordable. This is kind of the same action we followed with the coronavirus. Anybody in your area, were you exposed to the public? Did you wear your mask, etc.? You mentioned blood or bodily fluid exposure. Would that be considered the same part as a recordable incident as the original separate person's injury? Yes, if you're exposed to blood and other bodily fluids and you're the health provider, you're the first aid provider, you would be a separate instance from the other person, correct? Hopefully it wouldn't be recordable because hopefully nothing comes of it, but at least you've got the information. So there's your 300. There's your 300A. All right, we talked about those. Here's your 301. The 301 states you don't have to use this as long as your regular information, your first report of accident or your accident investigation forms have at least this information on it. There are certain states that require you to still use the 301. So know what those states are. They will ask for these forms if you have 20 or more employees and you work in construction, or you have 250 employees and you're in anything that is not covered by the new rule that we're getting ready to talk about.
Hey, Matt, we have another chat question.
Okay.
You mentioned blood or bodily fluid exposure. Would that be considered part of the same recordable incident as the original separate person's injury?
Correct. We just went over that. Yep.
Sorry.
Yep, you're good. I'd rather that than not, that's for sure. There's a little YouTube video that you can watch if you want to screenshot this or take a picture of it real quick. This goes on if you're reporting to OSHA and how to do it. You can also find this on OSHA.gov. Okay. This is turning in your OSHA 300 form and your 301s and all that, 300 days. We're going to talk about that now. So in 2020, 2021, something like that, OSHA updated their deal where there's electronic submissions of your 300 forms, your 300 days. This is all set up through the OSHA website, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. And everybody thinks this does not apply to me. All right, this is for high hazard or different establishments. You see where it says OSHA injury or illness records with establishments for 20 to 249 classified in this with historical high rates of occupational injuries or illness. If you're in construction, you can click on that, put in your NAICS code, and if you're in construction, I'll darn near guarantee that you are required to keep this. All right. It would be easier for you to look at the other link, which is basically, do we have to use this or not? Or are we excluded? All right. And that's also for the 250 or more. There are certain industries that are excluded just because they usually don't have a whole lot of accidents involved. So this is a requirement. You will be cited for not putting these together. You have until March 2nd, 2025 to put this in and file. I can tell you that in the past, we've had some people who said, hey, I'm honest. I'm going to call OSHA and let them know I haven't done this in the last 3 years. I don't suggest that because OSHA has cited those people. Hey, we're honest. We're going to let you know we want to put in our reports for the last 3 years. Put them in. Put them in now. Keep putting them in the future. But don't try to go back because everyone that's tried to go back and be honest about it, OSHA cited them for it. So I don't feel that that's fair, but it kind of is what it is. Remember, your 300A form is what you post February 1st to the end of April. Report online by March 2nd. That was 2021. It's 2025 this year. Okay. Is there any questions about that? Let me see if I can get out of this and share. This is on the OSHA website. If you go to osha.gov, this is the homepage for osha.gov. Okay. Right up here, the very first thing, employees can electronically submit their injury or illness data, and here's how. All right, so you can click right on that and it'll step you through. If you don't already have an account, you're going to need to set up an account so you can track it. While we're on here, we can see remembering lost workers. These are all people who died this year. All right. And if you click on any of those, it will give you details. So that's a little bit about this site. And then if we go to ITA, which is what it's called, here is exactly what you need to know. So if I put in injury tracking application or ITA into OSHA search, this is what I get. And it tells us I can look here to see if I'm excluded. I can look here to see if I'm included, but I need my NAICS code. You must submit 300 and 301 data. All right. So even if you're out and you don't use your 301, you still have to use some of that data that's on the 301. Certain states require you to submit all three. All right. This is where OSHA is going to be pulling a lot of information from over the next several years. So what state are you in? Did you have 11 or more employees? Peak establishment employment form from last year. Is the establishment a government facility? What's your NAICS code? Submit, and then it steps through from there. So again, this is all on OSHA's website, but this is the ITA. We used to just keep these on file, our OSHA 300 forms, and we didn't have to send them to OSHA. That again changed 4 or 5 years ago. So if you haven't been doing it, start now. I can't stress that enough. Prescription strength pain reliever prescribed to an employee but did not fill the prescription. Yes, once they give you the prescription, it's a recordable. Yeah. That's why a lot of companies choose to set up with an occupational physician so that they can kind of, those people know what is a recordable and what's not a recordable. They know, how to get people back to a work program, et cetera. If you go to a regular hospital or emergency care, the first thing they're going to do is pull out the prescription pad, unfortunately. All right. And they're going to make it a recordable. Stubbed my toe, got prescription pain medication. That's not needed, perhaps. And we can't second guess that because we are not doctors. In fact, we can get in trouble if we try to go beyond what the doctor said. You can get other medical opinions. Know that as well. Questions for all this information. I know we just threw a lot of information at you in both the first and second session, but we got a little over 10 minutes left. I really want to answer some questions here. If it's related to these topics, great. If it's just a safety question, by all means, throw them at me. If I don't know, I'll try to find them for you. But yeah, let's hear from you guys. Not everybody wants now. Don't be shy.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
A quick question. So the occupational physician, that would be something different than like our typical just urgent care, correct?
Correct. You usually set up an account with like a Corp OHS or an Inova, Work Health. There's a bunch of them around. You can probably talk to your insurance provider and see who they have that they used in the past. But yeah, you set up something, and usually what happens in that relationship is, number one, it gives me the ability to schedule. My employee just got hurt and called me and said, "Hey, I need stitches." Great. Here's the local area. I'm going to put all your information in on the computer and I can send them there. They're not going to sit there with, a bandage on their hand for 4 hours waiting to be seen. They walk in, they get treated. That's the good part of it. They also usually, part of that relationship is talk to you and say, "Do you have a back to work program? Can we go through the different classifications of back to work that you offer?" So they may say it's a class 1, class 2, you kind of set those things. What is non-weight bearing? What is, can't use the dominant side, can use the dominant side? Can you sit and learn? Because obviously we have online safety training that we can put them through so many hours a day, but you give them just an option of what to do to work, right? So they kind of help you through that. They're going to be less likely to give somebody a big painkiller when Advil will do. So
Matt, question, Ronnie. The 308 form should be posted by March 2nd, correct?
the 300A form should be posted from February 1st to the end of April in the work areas where the employees can see it.
Okay. So what's the difference between 300A and 300 form?
300 form has all their names, has all the specifics.
Oh, okay.
A is just basically a wrap-up form. It's just
The wrap up.
all those numbers. Yep. Now, the March 2nd number that you wrote down is getting it all into OSHA under the ITA. And again, go to OSHA.gov to find that with the ITA.
Okay.
Great questions. Anybody else?
So another chat question. If the employee did not like the treatment from the first doctor and decided to go on their own to a different clinic and was prescribed a medication, do I still count that as recordable?
Yeah, unfortunately, they got another opinion, which they can do. And they were prescribed medication, and that makes it recordable. Yes.
So at this point, Matt, great presentation. Thank you. Any injury inside the work area, we might consider recordable, right? Inside the work area. No.
If there was no loss of time, if there, I can cut my finger and go to the first aid kit and get a Band-Aid, right?
Right.
Not recordable. Now, if I needed prescription medication or I got stitches, then it becomes recordable. So there's a lot of first aid stuff that we do regularly that should not be on your OSHA 300 form. In fact, when I sit down with clients, kind of part of the first get-ups beyond looking at their website, looking at their OSHA stuff, one of the first things I ask for is the last 5 years of your OSHA 300 form. and I go through it and I go, well, why is this recordable? Why is that recordable? And you'd be surprised how many are not recordable. Oh, because we sent that to the insurance. Well, there was no prescription medication. It was just a sprain. You know, they didn't need that wrist, non-dominant wrist anyways, doing what they're doing. It's not recordable. So if you ever have that question, again, I'm always around. But OSHA, this is probably one of the best written standards from OSHA. If you actually look it up, there's a lot of what if, and if you run into this, this is what you do. I mean, they did a great job with this actual standard if you look at it.
So any prescription considered like a painkiller very much would be a recordable,
Any prescription is a recordable. It makes it a recordable.
except from the counter.
Non-prescription at non-prescription strength.
Okay, okay.
Over-the-counter drugs at the over-the-counter levels, not take 5 Advil because it equals this. No, that's a prescription strength of using non-prescription strength drug.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the implications, if any, of people putting recordables on their sheet that actually aren't recordables?
It's not terrible, but a lot of times, you know, that's going to affect your data, right? Because when you do these jobs, now people are getting smarter and understanding that your EMR is the first 3 of your last 4 full years, right? We're in 2025. We're not looking at 2024. We're looking at your data from 23, 22, and 20. That's insurance data, but it's easy to use. All right. Well, a lot of GCs understand that if I want real-time data, I'm going to ask you for your what's called your TRIR or your DART rate, days away restricted transferred, or your total recordable. So if I have 9 items listed that we're saying is recordable, but really 5 of them are only recordable, when I do my TRIR calculations for that job bid, I'm going to be way off. Okay. Because we take the number times 200,000 divided by total man hours worked. 5 times 200,000 divided by total man hours worked, and 9 times 200,000 divided by total man hours worked. Big difference. We're going to take that information and we're going to look up under BLS what you do. So we find that NAICS code and we say, what's the average for an electrician, for a commercial electrician? What's the average TRIR? And it may be a 4.6. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air. Well, if mine's a 7.2, that's a problem. If I only had the 4 or 5 and it actually puts me down to a 5.6, I'm much more likely to get that job. So understanding how to do this correctly, that's where it comes into place, especially on bid day. Because a lot of companies are hiring basically filter screeners that if your EMR is too high, you don't have the proper safety program, or your DART rate or your TRIR is too high, they just kick you to a pile and don't even look at your bid. That's going to be a problem. It's going to shrink where you're getting work. So this is where safety is very important.
Hey, Matt, I'm sorry. What do you recommend tools, resource in order to drop the EMR?
Oh, that's a whole presentation on itself. Do me a favor, give me a call. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
I mean, they can tell you I come in and work on a lot of cases with high EMR and help the company get it down. I tell everybody it's a minimum of 3 years to put in on it before we even start affecting it. But it's a consistent process. There's no magic bullet, but there's a lot of parts and pieces we can put into place and really work on EMRs. So yes, we can help with that, but I will put my number in the chat. This is my direct.
And while he's doing that, one of the things that we do at Preferred is we follow up on open claims over a certain dollar amount to try to keep those reserves down, because the reserves will affect your EMR just as much as paid claims do. So we try to keep those reserves down and get claims closed as fast as possible for you. We have a dedicated claims manager. His name is Jacob Wagner, and he follows up on claims, sends out claim status reports every 45 days to our insureds, so that you can keep track of those claims yourself and try to manage them to get those claim dollars down as quickly as possible so that it reduces the impact on your EMR.
That's huge. A lot of times, I've worked again with Preferred for a long time, so I'll often recommend them sometimes when we go to working with a client because of that, being aggressive with open claims. Insurance companies aren't going to like that I tell this all the time, but I really don't care. Behind the curtain, a lot of companies don't care if your claims stay open. Why? Because that's some inflated costs that you're going to pay, and they're making a percentage of that. Okay.
Absolutely.
When you get those costs down because you close those claims, then they lose money. Lose. It's kind of like Vegas. The lights always stay on, right? They're always going to get their money. But it's important to have somebody, and again, I use them. There's probably 2, maybe 3 companies that I'll recommend to work with only because they're aggressive about making sure those claims get closed. There's some of them, bad backs, certain things like that, especially when they come back to work. It's almost like we don't want to see that quite closed yet. Let's see how this works first because we don't want it to become a new claim, right? We kind of have to feel that out. And they're really good at that. So, and they've brought me in on some pretty high claim stuff and or high MR stuff, and we've brought it down. But yeah, I can definitely talk to you about that. Other questions? No one? Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Again, my cell phone number is there. If you have a question, reach out, ask. I don't charge for questions. I only charge when you need me. So if I have to come out and help you, or if you need me to go over your 300 with you to make sure it's right, that's stuff we do. Okay. So feel free. But other than that, really appreciate everybody taking some snow day time out to come visit us and be in on these sessions. And always enjoy doing this for y'all.
Can you put your phone number again, please, Matt?
Yeah, sure. And I'll say it out loud too. 703
Yep.
930
Okay.
2760.
Thank you.
I've had that same number since 1998, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere, hopefully anytime soon. I still have an AOL email address. If that tells you how long I've been doing this.
You like me. I do have AOL too.
Thank you all.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Great information to have it. I appreciate it. Enjoy your day.
Yeah,
Thank you everyone for coming. And as always, thank you, Matt, so much.
no,
Thanks again, Matt.
you're welcome.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
You too.